I'm going to be cooking up some beef stew. Now I'm going to cook up this beef stew in my crock pot here. And I'm going to let it simmer for several hours. And then I'm going to can it up in my pressure cooker, and I'm going to put it up on the shelf. And that way I'll have some stew for a rainy day. You know, it's September now, and the days are going to get colder. And there's nothing like a nice hot bowl of soup or stew on a cold winter's day. So, stick around. Well, now the obvious is, to make a beef stew, you're going to need the beef, right? So I bought some beef stew meat. And the meat's pretty large, so I'm going to end up cutting it in half, probably like nice small little chunks in my stew. You're going to need some cabbage. I have a nice head of cabbage here. I'm not going to use the whole head of cabbage. I'm probably just maybe a quarter of it. Some potatoes. A couple of potatoes. An onion. If you have a nice large onion, use that. I have 2 small onions. Probably will be just enough. So I'm going to use my onions. I have some carrots. I have some celery. So I'm going to use some celery in there too. And I have a can of stewed tomatoes. Some people make beef stew with tomatoes, tomato sauce, and some people they don't. But this is how I make it. This is how I was taught to make it. That's how I grew up making it. So we're going to make it with some stewed tomatoes. And of course, you know, the salt, the pepper, the garlic. Okay, so as you can see, these meat chunks are really large. So I like to cut them in half and even quarter them so that they're not so large and they cook up better that way. And if you're going to put them in a stew, you like nice bite-sized pieces. Somebody's going to choke on that. So we're going to cut it up. After I cut them up is I'm going to coat them with a little seasoning, salt and pepper and whatnot. Give them a little browning on the sides there. And then we're going to cook them in the stew. Watch your fingers. Now, your fingers are important, so you need those. Don't hurt yourself. Alrighty. You can see that my meat is all chopped. Pretty good bite-sized pieces there. They're not too large. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to toss these in a little salt, a little pepper, get them brown, get some browning on them, and then I'm going to put them in the crock pot, and then I'm going to start layering my stew. Now, I got to tell you, you know, the ingredients that I mentioned to you, my dad used to make beef stew all the time, and he was the best cook. The best cook. But he used to use turnips in his stews. I'm not a big fan of turnips. So if you want to use turnips in your stew, by all means, use turnips or whatever other vegetables you would like to put in there. That's why it's a stew. You kind of put a little bit of everything in there, and you make it how you like to make it, you know, and a nice hearty beef stew. Okay, let me get started on this. So I'm just going to toss in some pepper. Here, let me just do it this way so you can kind of see. Just some pepper in there, not too much. A little bit of salt. When you season your soups or whatever, you season in layers. So just like you build your stew and or soups in layers. I have some basil here. Oh no, that doesn't go in there yet. Some onion powder. Sprinkle that over there. So I like to have the meat seasoned really well. Some garlic powder. What's that? There we go. Just give it a nice toss. As you can see, the meat's getting nice and brown. And I'm going to go ahead and re-season. Now I'm going to dump my meat along with the juice into my crock pot. I'm not going to waste all that goodness. No siree. Not on my watch. So I just chopped up a small onion. I was going to use 2, but I'm thinking this small onion is going to be enough. So I'm just going to toss that in. I chopped up the whole bag of carrots. Three stalks of celery, chopped. I'm going to pour in 1 can of stewed tomatoes. A 16-ounce bottle of water. We're going to add more liquid later. We're going to let this simmer for a little bit. Then we're going to add in the potatoes and then the cabbage. Alrighty, now I've given this a nice stir. And it actually looks pretty good. It does need some flavor. So I like to use this product. It's called Better Than Bouillon, and you can get it in most stores. This is a beef base. So I just like to take a little bit of it. A little bit goes a long way. Just remember that. If you use it a little bit, goes a long way. So I just like to put that into my stew for the flavor, and a little bit at a time. And if I need more, I will add more. Just remember, whenever you cook, okay, you can always put things in, but you can't take things out. So when you're cooking and you're seasoning, you can always add more seasoning. But once the seasoning is in there, you can't take it out. So, you know, that's why I season in layers, and I do a little bit at a time to get just to the right taste for me. Because if you do too much, it's too much, and you've ruined your soup. So, anyway, we're going to let that simmer for a little while. And in just about an hour, I'm going to go ahead and add the potatoes. I want to get the flavoring right before I add in my potatoes, because the potatoes will become too starchy if I put them in right now, and they'll kind of mess up the flavoring, I believe, of my soup. So I'm going to wait on that. I'm going to let this simmer for about an hour and then add in my remaining two vegetables, the cabbage and the potatoes, and then give it a nice taste, see where we're at, get my canning jars ready, and we'll can this up for a rainy day. It's only been simmering just a few short minutes, maybe about 15 minutes or so. I've given it a taste, and I'm going to go ahead and add in some basil. And just throw that in there. And I'm going to add in a little bit of oregano. Oh, it smells so good. And throw that in there. A nice stir. I think it's time to add my cabbage. Isn't that a nice head of cabbage? Now, when you get your cabbage from the store, I like to take off that first couple layers. Just because you just don't know what's got on there, you know? So, set that aside. Now, I'm not going to use a whole head of cabbage, so that's a lot of cabbage. So I'm probably going to use about this much of it. A lot of cabbage. Going to add in the 2 chopped potatoes. This is going to be a real hearty stew. Let me bring it in. Okay, I'm just going to mix this up. I'm going to have to add more water. But you see how thick that is with all those veggies in there. So, one more bottle of water. Alrighty. And I'm going to add more beef base. A little bit more. Put that in there. Actually, maybe a couple tablespoons more in there. Right. Let this continue to cook. And I will check the final flavoring in just about an hour. And let you know what else it might need. But I think we're getting close. Throw that mixed up in there. Let me give it a little bit of a taste right now. Actually, we're pretty dead on that one. Okay. The soup has been simmering for several hours. So it's time to get it into the canner. I have 4-quart jars here. I may need one more. We'll see where we're at. But I'm just going to go ahead and start filling my jars up. And I'm putting in a little in each jar because I want to get the measurement pretty much even. Okay, so I've gotten 4 quarts out of this, and I'm going to go ahead and put the lids on them and get them into the canner. And they will cook in the canner for 90 minutes at 10 pounds pressure. Well, all right. It's been several hours since I started this cooking today with making the beef stew and then canning it up, and it's several hours later. It's finally done. I can take it out of the canner now. There, like so. Alrighty. Here we go. It's very hot still, but I want you to see how beautiful that is, how nice that is. Look at that. That is some good beef stew right there. It would be really nice on a cold winter day. You just open up that jar and pour some in a cup or heat it up on the stove, and there you go. You have some homemade beef stew. Alright, let me get these other ones out of here. Alright guys, that's it for me today. I hope you enjoyed it. It was been a long day. Anyway, be safe, be well, and be kind. We'll see you later. Bye-bye.